Hi, happy Wednesday, you guys. We're halfway through the week and we're getting towards the end of the challenge, which is just incredible to me. It's gone by so fast. Sorry, I was rushing to get on here and I was still a few minutes late, so I apologize for that. I had confession. I had the cleaning lady here, which is awesome. It's such a gift to have someone help with our cleaning, and she comes every 2 weeks, and so I'm like, okay, I need to get on live. No more vacuuming. And so she just left. So grateful for her to come. That's a huge thing I'm grateful for. After living in Argentina, I got pretty spoiled. So today we are going to talk about hunger, energy, and cravings, and calorie counting. So a lot of things, and I want to try and keep it as concise and helpful as possible without overwhelming. So there's a lot I want to cover and I could cover. So I'm trying to really try and hone in on just actionable things that you can do without getting too caught up in maybe all the hormones and all the very nitty-gritty part of it that can get pretty overwhelming. So I don't want that to be the goal. So take just as little as you can to work on, to take action on, and leave the rest. So don't try and take on everything if it doesn't serve you. If you're not at that point yet, try and have enough self-awareness to be like, okay, this is too much. Let me just focus on one thing at a time. Similar to how we've been doing the challenge. You've been doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and that's being great. Like, you're starting to see some success. So try and apply that same mindset to your diet as well. And know that it's a long process, and it's something that takes patience, and it takes time, and it takes keep coming back. So just maybe think of how you've been doing well with not trying to be perfect with your workouts, but still you're getting some gains. You're feeling stronger. You're feeling momentum. You're not feeling that huge hurdle to get exercise every day. So the same thing applies to your diet and healthy eating. It takes time. It takes a process. I think Steph mentioned that the other time, that it's taken her years. And to finally feel at that point. And for me, Steph Kleinberg is like the epitome of like a healthy eater and someone who has a really good relationship with food, but it wasn't always that way. And it takes years sometimes to really uncover kind of the best way to eat for yourself. And so this all came up kind of like from a post that Melissa, I always say your last name wrong, I think, Rizzo, last week, posted about the MyFitnessPal, and it kind of got me thinking, because there's so many people that ask me about that app and ask me about calorie counting, and friends or family members who will send me their food records and want me to calculate their calories, their exact calories, and I'm happy to do that. But I've been finding over and over and over again that it's often a disservice, that it keeps us stuck. It can keep us really stuck in those numbers and not actually uncovering a way of eating that's a lasting way of eating that really works for each individual. And that's why I've kind of been bashing on calorie counting a bit over the last week or so. You might have been seeing in the newsletter and social media. So by no means trying to pick out on people and call out people and say that calorie counting overall is a bad thing. It's a tool. It's a tool, and I often like to use it with a food journal. We're recording other things like the hunger, energy, and cravings, or how much exercise you did, and maybe the timing. All that stuff is information and a tool to help you be a diet detective, and instead of it being the only thing that you're doing. And I like to use that food journal and maybe calculating calories after the fact. So say, like 3 days, as an example, I like to have people do 2 days during the week and 1 day on the weekend. And then, for instance, I would go over that and give them information, like these are how many calories. So it's more of a reflective process rather than in the moment, you only have this many left and you can only eat these many. Because what that does, oftentimes, this calorie counting mindset, is it favors so much more the carbohydrate rich foods, because those are less calories per gram, and it really biases against things like fat in particular, and protein kind of gets in the middle depending on people's focus or not. If they're not focused on protein because it has the same amount of calories per gram as carbohydrate, if people aren't really aware of it, they tend not to necessarily include as much protein in their diet, and they just really focus on the carbohydrate-rich foods. And the reason for that, I would say, is the food industry, and that they're so much easier. They're so easy to grab carbohydrate foods. Think about it when you travel or when you're out. How easy is it often to find things like I don't know, just like super sugary foods, or granola bars, or really sugary yogurts, or a candy bar. All those things are super easy to grab. It's harder to, because of storage as well. They don't keep as well. Like higher protein or higher fat foods don't last as long. They're usually a little bit more vulnerable, and they aren't on the shelf and easy to grab unless they're beef jerky or something like that. So especially for vegetarians, it's very hard to get convenience foods that are high in protein. So that's why protein often gets left sort of in this limbo, and people, when they're just purely focused on calories, because carbohydrate foods have less calories generally per serving, they think of that and they think, oh, I can eat more of these, subconsciously even, you know, like people, I'm not accusing people of anything, but it's just like a subconscious thing. And with higher fat foods, they have a lot more calories in them typically. So unless we're being really, really careful about how we're approaching calorie counting, it can really favor the high carbohydrate rich foods. And I'm going to talk about that, why it's maybe disservice in a second, and inappropriately bias against higher fat foods, especially the ones perhaps that we do want to include that are healthier. So why would we maybe not want to have such a why would we not want to have such a high carbohydrate diet, or to use our maybe allocated. Hi again. Let's really hope that this doesn't crash again this time. I just updated my Facebook app on my phone again to see if that prevents it from crashing. I've been having problems in yesterday and the day before too, and I did them on my general page. So hopefully we'll be good to go now. If not, I'll just post these little clips. It's trying to keep me concise, right? It's like, cut it. Stop talking, Carolyn. Okay, so I kind of was going over a little bit of the backstory of, kind of why we're talking about this, why calorie counting is sort of favors carbohydrates more than fats, and I want to now go into maybe why we don't want to be so focused and be careful with how much carbohydrates we get in. And I want to preface all of this by saying that everyone is unique. Everyone has different genetics, which is absolutely incredible, right? That so many millions, billions of people in the world and that have gone before us, and we all have a unique genetic blueprint. So what I believe is that there are general nutrition principles but we each have our own unique nutrition blueprint. What works for me will not necessarily work for you. There could be similarities, there could be huge differences too, right? And I really think that there, some people, I'm going to take, I have a really good friend that you guys, some of you know. I have a couple of friends actually that are vegetarians or predominantly vegetarians, and they have a much higher carbohydrate diet, and it really works for them. And I say that it works for them not just because of their weight, they are a healthy weight, but I say it works for them because they have good energy, they're not constantly thinking about food, they are happy, they're healthy, and those to me are markers of the diet working, not just the weight. Whereas for me, I really do best, I find, on a much higher protein diet that includes more animal proteins. So I'm just, as a small example, is that everyone has a very unique diet that's going to work for them. So again, this idea of a nutrition blueprint that's unique because we all have unique genetics, and the way that our body's metabolism works is going to affect how we are going to need to eat in a way that's best for us. So I see a couple people are jumping on. I don't see who it is, but welcome. And please put any questions in the comments if you have them. Give me a like if you can hear me and see me okay, because I've been having some problems with tech stuff. So everyone, I'm prefacing just this what I'm going to say now about carbohydrates in the sense that some people's carbohydrate sort of ability to metabolize those carbohydrates is a lot higher than other people. I can handle a pretty good amount of carbohydrates. I'm not someone that needs a super low carbohydrate diet, for instance, but I do better with animal proteins and getting a pretty hefty dose, oh thanks Juanita, of protein in with each meal and each snack. it's something where if I don't, I'm going to be hungry like almost immediately afterwards. I might be craving things right after I ate a full meal, like pancakes, for example. If I don't have something with protein with it, for me, it just doesn't work very well for my weight and for how my energy and my cravings are and my hunger. So in general, we're going to get into in a second why we would monitor these markers of heck, and I add sleep, so it's check. So why would we monitor hunger, energy, cravings, and I add sleep because it has such an impact on the other things. And that's going to be kind of the focus going forward. But before I go into that, I just want to talk really quickly about this carbohydrate and maybe why, with calorie counting, it focuses more on encouraging higher carbohydrate intake because there's less calories per gram versus fats. And then I was saying at the first video that got cut off that proteins kind of get lost in the milieu. They kind of get in limbo. And some people will focus on them more than others, but generally carbohydrates are focused on with calorie counting, fats are discouraged. And that can set us up for some difficulties, I think, because when we eat carbohydrate foods, regardless of what they are, and there's definitely a benefit to having ones that are not refined, that are whole sources, but they still are broken down into sugar in our bodies, and that stimulates the release of insulin. And insulin is one of the hormones in our body that can affect our hunger, our energy, and our cravings, but especially our energy and our hunger levels. And so when we have too much of them and our body isn't metabolizing them, and it can also create this increased hunger in us, right? It can create, if you've ever had something that's really sugary and you feel hungrier, or maybe sometimes for me, I don't know what it is, if I eat just a piece of fruit by itself, it makes me more hungry. And that's not the case for everyone, but for me, I find like if I just have carbohydrates by themselves, or pretzels, that's another good one. Like on the plane, if I just have pretzels, dear Lord, it's like if I don't have something else, it's just like I'm starving, and I would be better off if I just never even had those pretzels in the first place. It's just totally, I think that for me, it's a complicated picture, but for me, I'm guessing what happens is that my body releases insulin and it triggers even more hunger. Like I'm more hungry than I was before I even had those. And if I don't have protein and some fat with it too. So again, everyone's a little unique, but for me, that's definitely an experience that I've had, and I think that's common for a lot of my clients, is just this like carbohydrates by themselves, as our bodies digest them, releases insulin as a way to process it and incorporate the sugars into our bloodstream. But that can have an effect on the other biofeedback measures, like the hunger and the energy especially, and as well as cravings a little bit, but especially the hunger and the energy. So I want to just make sure I'm getting kind of the points. Like I said, there's a lot I can dive into, and it's really hard to keep this concise without kind of going crazy with it. So why do I want to talk about this, and why have I kind of been bashing on calorie counting? Because usually what's pushed with calorie counting is the need, and especially with MyFitnessPal, is like you cut calories and you exercise more. So that very traditional approach of like eat less, exercise more, get that, you have to create a caloric deficit, and you're doing that in two ways, with your diet and with exercise, and it works for like 5% of the population long term. 95% of people that studies have looked at this method, it doesn't work. It actually creates more problems going forward because people gain weight back. And think about the mental impact, right? Like if you worked so hard cutting calories and exercising more, and then you didn't have good results from it, and it's just a huge mental impact. You feel like it's so defeated. It feels awful. You like put all that effort into it and no results, and actually feel worse then, or you gain the weight back. And so for me, it's not just about the weight changes and it not working long-term for weight. It's also just the weight can feel really defeating and really negative. So what I'm encouraging instead, what I was encouraging you guys to do, and had your little assignment, was to monitor a bit more, be a diet detective, and investigate these markers, because what these markers are showing you. So why are we measuring hunger, energy, and cravings? And I add sleep in there. Is because they are biofeedback markers that our body gives us as clues, as a response that we're either getting into a good hormonal balance or our hormones are way off, creating these increased cravings, weird energy patterns, or you're feeling really tired, or you're feeling like you got lots of energy at one moment and then you crash. And then also it can affect our hunger, where we're feeling really like ravenously hungry, or that's usually the main one, is that you just feel like super hungry. And so what these feet are telling us is that, like, either something, if they're not in good control, if they're not, like, if you're having ravenous hunger, if you're having weird energy, if you're having uncontrollable cravings, it means that there's something kind of off balance with our hormones. And like I was saying, it can be maybe from the diet. Like, I was just a brief example of like eating the bag of pretzels on the plane that they give you for your snack with your drink, and it making you more hungry, and at least in my case. And I find that for a lot of people that can happen. And that's often due to the release of hormones in response to the food you eat. And maybe also the stress of being on a cramped plane. Okay, let's hope that the third time is a charm. I'm doing it from my computer, so sorry you guys. Hopefully you can jump on and join me for this one, and I'm going to consolidate these all together on YouTube when I put them up for you guys. So, trying to find a place for my notes here. I don't usually like to do it on my computer because it never syncs very well with what I'm saying with the visual. So it's usually a lag in the connection for some reason. So hopefully this will work better. Okay, let me try and just wrap up because I feel like I'm getting a little flustered from all these interruptions from the technology. So we were talking about calories and calorie counting, and why I would encourage you to do more of a diet detective approach. And the reason for that is to get into monitoring the hunger, energy, and cravings, and getting to that point where they're feeling like you have good control of your hunger. You're not like feeling ravenously hungry. You can go for maybe 3, 4, 5 hours in between meals. You have steady kind of energy during that time period between your meals, and you're not having big crashes and ups and downs. And then with your cravings, that you're having just not after cravings are different from hunger, in the sense, in case anyone's not really clear on that, are different because hunger is like a physiological response where you actually need to eat something. Cravings are a more mental, emotional response where we're wanting something. It can be, and usually they happen even immediately after a meal. For instance, it's really common for people to crave something sweet as soon as they finish dinner or a meal in general. And so that's where the difference is between hunger and cravings. So monitoring the HEC, or adding in sleep, is a way to find out if you are achieving a hormonal balance. So why do we want to achieve a hormonal balance? Because it's going to make it more feasible for you to sustain any kind of, if weight loss is a goal, for instance, it's going to make any kind of way that you're eating feel sustainable and something that you can maintain. Whereas with this eat less, exercise more approach that I was talking about, that only really works for like 5% of the population and doesn't give lasting results and can cause actually like worse compliance long term, is that I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, you guys, I'm really flustered from all this, like, having to start again and trying to figure out where I left off. So, jeez, where was I? Okay, so why does it not work? Oh, sorry, for the 95% people that doesn't work for, the reason why it doesn't really work is that it is causing such a huge hormonal reaction. So, like, the eating less and the exercising more is putting the body into this physiological state of a resistance, right? Like, it's like mad that it's not getting enough calories, it's mad that it's having the stress from the exercise, and the way it's responding to that is that all of a sudden, you might notice this if you start exercising a lot more, like an hour, a few times a week, 45 minutes or more, usually like long runs or Zumba classes, those kinds of things that are longer duration, you get really hungry, you start just wanting to shove everything in your mouth, and you can find that your cravings get out of control. You can get to the end of the day, you feel like you've been trying to be super controlled, but then by the end of the day, you have no more willpower, and you just like grab whatever the hell you can and just shove it in your mouth. Can anyone like relate to that? If you can, please like hit a like. So I feel like I hear this so much, and it's really frustrating. And because you're trying to do what everyone's told you is what you're supposed to do: eat less, exercise more, get that caloric deficit, And the only truth in this whole thing is that yes, to lose weight, especially fat, you do need a caloric deficit, but the way in which you achieve that is super important. It's not just cutting overall calories, it's looking at what you're actually eating and how it affects your body. And it also is taking into consideration the exercise that you do and the stress that you have in your life. So there's like 3 parts to it. You got to look at your diet, you got to look at your exercise, what are you doing, and how does it affect your energy and your cravings and all that. And then what other things are happening in your life that can really affect those other things. And the best tool that I've ever found that I've been using and have myself for the last 2-3 years, and that my clients have a lot of success with, is that HEC, monitoring your HEC, hunger, energies, and cravings. And because it's just a really catch-all way of finding out if your hormones are in good balance. So if you don't have a lot of hunger, if you have steady energy, if you don't have a ton of cravings, then you know that your hormones are in good balance. So where do you start with all that? So the place you start is just monitoring your hunger, energy, and cravings, like I mentioned in the post yesterday. And I added in sleep because it has such an impact. It creates some stress in our life when we don't get enough sleep. Like, I've not been getting enough sleep lately, and I'm hungry and craving a lot of stuff. So we start with monitoring that, and then we look at maybe when you're monitoring it, you're just creating more awareness. So the time you were maybe devoting to counting all those calories or putting all that information in a MyFitnessPal app, use that time instead to have just a little notebook or journal. And at the end of the day, just make a few notes. It doesn't have to be super intense, just like H, like hunger, put in maybe a score if that's helpful for you, if you're a numbers person. If you're more qualitative, just write in a few notes about it. Like, I felt super hungry. Note the time that you feel really hungry maybe, and that's going to be sort of an area then you can focus a bit more of your attention. For energy, you can either put a score and or some information about, like, I noticed at this time I really had a dip in my energy. Like, for me, it's in the afternoon, around 3 or 4 o'clock is when I have a dip in my energy. And maybe start really getting hungry. So noticing those things. And then cravings, like, when are you having the most cravings? And put the times when you're having them. And any notes that help you, like, today I had this for lunch and I really felt great afterwards, or in the morning I just grabbed some crackers on the way out the door, or a granola bar or whatever, and I felt super hungry like 2 hours later. Put any notes in that feel useful to you. You're gonna know what they are. And it's just going to take, maybe you're starting out with writing a lot of notes at the beginning, and then you start to get really kind of more clued in, and you can just write less notes as you go forward. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And what is also important to note is you can either have a separate section like you do, like for sleep, at the first thing, like your check, include your sleep, how it was, and maybe a score if that's helpful for you, if you like heavy numbers. And then the last thing is your exercise. What did you do for movement and exercise? Any notes that you can include about your exercise. And with the sleep thing, I'm going to go right back up to that. Sorry, so the sleep was the first thing, and then I'm adding in as my personal thing, because HEC is actually a tool from the Metabolic Effect group. So it's not my own unique thing, but I added in sleep. So it's check, and sleep and stress, I think, are 2 things you can note. So sleep and stress, make any notes about any additional stress you have in your life, maybe how you mitigated it, how you try to manage that. Did you include any relaxation? Did you include any meditation? Did you include any walking, like leisure walking or yoga? How was your stress and your sleep component? The next thing is the hunger, then the energy, then the cravings. The last thing I would add, in addition to check, is your exercise. Just make a note of whatever you did that day. Walked for 30 minutes, or did a 10-minute hit, or whatever it is. Put that in your notes. So it's going to be a quick little page. Take about 5 to 10 minutes. You're done. Instead of taking that same amount of time or more to enter every single thing you put in your mouth for the day in a calorie counting app. So that's my suggestion, because I find that information and the use of our time and energy is so much more rich with information and data that you can actually take and figure out in the end a lot more quickly. It does take time. I'm not going to say it's going to be a super overnight process. It does take time to put the clues together. But if you start being a diet detective today and take 5 to 10 minutes to write down those things over the next month, 2 months, 3 months. You're going to start getting faster at noticing trends. You're going to notice all the clues, and you're going to start to adjust your diet. So where do we start adjusting our diet? Like, what are some basic things that I would recommend? Those would be to really focus on kind of unlimited amounts of watery, low carbohydrate, high fiber foods. So that's going to be your leafy greens, your non-starchy vegetables. So you can have those in abundance. You can have as much of those as you want. So zucchini, tomatoes, whatever, bell peppers. I'm going to, of course, not think of all of them. So anything that's not like starchy, sort of like a sweet potato, winter squash, those are your separate kind of thing. Those are going to give you quite a bit of carbohydrates. They're great for you. They have tons of nutrients and fiber. But think of more of the things when they're cooked, they get kind of watery, or they just are really crisp and crunchy. Those are going to be lower carbohydrate, and you can have as much of those, and you should have as much as you can kind of throughout the day. I think there's always room for improvement for getting more vegetables in. There's just like, you can never have too much of them. And so focus on those low carbohydrate, watery vegetables, and then lean protein. That could be, if you're a vegetarian, it could be beans, it could be eggs, dairy products, it can be fish is awesome, seafood, meat, all of those are amazing. And protein powders can be really helpful. Like right now, I'm thankful for like one meal a day I have is with protein powder, like a shake with a lot of added other things into it. But it's just been really easy when I've been super busy to get one meal a day that I don't have to take as much time for, but I know I'm going to get tons of nutrition and a good amount of protein and fiber in. So that's where you start. You start with really lean proteins and watery vegetables in abundance, as much as you want, as well as lower carbohydrate fruits like berries, apples, pears. But berries are awesome, and watermelons, some of those melons. And then maybe cut back a little bit on things like bananas and mangoes and more really sugary fruits. So have those, like that be the foundation of your diet. And then you can start to play around with adding other things like whole grains, and playing around with how much you feel like good with and how it affects your HEC, and just adjust accordingly. It's going to take time to kind of tweak it out, right? And the timing of, like, some people do better with more carbohydrates for breakfast, and some do better with them at dinner time. So find what works for you, and have a bit of confidence about it. Have a bit of like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Like, it's going to take time, and just approach it with the sense of patience and confidence, and just be like, I got to start somewhere, and just get started. Get started, investigate. So the first thing is get started, trust yourself, be patient with the process, but just know that you are the one ultimately in control and knows your body the best, and you start with that confidence. So get started, investigate, use that HEC plus your sleep and your exercise to track as you go forward. It's going to take you less time in the long run, I would guarantee you, than trying other ways that just other plans that are like not really unique for you. And then the next thing is just keep staying committed to do what works for you, and not what works for me, not what works for your sister, not what works for your friend, but keep coming back to what works for you. What is the magic formula that is unique for you that really works? And it's going to ebb and flow through different periods of your life. And you're going to be maybe on it and off it, in the sense of like you're really nailing it and your HEC is like super awesome. You feel like, yes, I got this. I'm eating really well. I'm exercising in a way that feels good. I'm sleeping. I don't have much stress. But then, of course, like we all know, there's going to be periods, and I'm in one of them, where we're not sleeping as much. We maybe have more stress, or we're not eating as well, or our exercise is off. And it's a learning experience. So I know right now my HEC is not in check. And it's not something I'm proud of, but I'm aware of it, and I know the reasons why now. Instead of freaking out and being like, I'm craving cookies, like what am I gonna do? Or like, I don't know, just like this anxiety about my diet is not really there anymore. There's this understanding around it, and I'm taking steps. I know that I'm gonna get back on track. I'm slowly trying to get more sleep. I'm trying to incorporate relaxation throughout the day, instead of like waiting to try and relax at night and then not working? Of course not. Like I'm just stressed out throughout the day, so I have to work on taking just like 1 to 5 minutes throughout the day to chill out. And I know that, you know, I'm working on, oh, thanks, Becky. I'm working on getting back in line with my eating that feels good for me. Like when we were in DC this last weekend, I was out of whack a bit and not eating in a way that felt really good for me. And I'm still feeling the effects of it. So today I'm going to Costco this afternoon and I'm going to load up on all the things that I know are going to help me feel my best. You know, lots of vegetables, lots of fresh produce, as well as frozen things that are easy to throw together, convenience protein options, and what else? Just things that I know are going to make it life a lot easier because I just like can have them ready to go. Like rotisserie chicken, I'm going to grab tonight just to have it for a quick addition to our meal and be ready to go. It's so much easier when you have those things in line, and I know that's going to help me get my heck back in check. So to summarize, I've kind of been talking about a lot of different things. Sorry. When I kind of bring this all together, I got a little thrown off from all the tech issues that happened. So just to kind of, I want to give you some specific things to do, but overall, like number one, approach it, just get started. Be confident about it. Just have the sense of like, I know my body the best. I am the one in charge of this. I am the diet detective, number one person in my life, not Carolyn, not any other coach, not any other plan. So that's number one thing I want you guys to really claim is your confidence and like patience with the process. So, you know, it's not perfection. It's just staying engaged with the process. The number two thing is like, just start investigating. Use that heck and then my addition of sleep, monitoring your sleep and your stress, and exercise, like what you're doing for exercise and how it affects your heck. So just start investigating. And then the last thing is like just to keep coming back to doing what works for you. If you kind of realize your heck gets out of check and you feel tempted, which is the thing, you could feel tempted to fall into like this wanting to just jump into a plan, or like, oh, somebody's doing that cleanse, or somebody's doing that program, or somebody's doing Weight Watchers and it really works for them. There's a huge temptation to want to do what somebody else is doing, and maybe it is working for them. And that's great. You can applaud them, support them, awesome. I'm happy for them. They should be happy about that for themselves. But it might not be the best thing to do for you. You can try elements of it and see if it works and keeps your heck in check, but I would encourage you, the last thing is just like, do you. Do what works for you and keep coming back to that process of getting started and just investigating and be the diet detective and knowing that it's a process. Okay, specific action steps. Again, focus on watery, low carbohydrate vegetables, lean protein, and tons of fiber. That should be the foundation of your diet. So lean protein from either vegetarian or non-vegetarian sources, non-starchy vegetables in abundance, and then lower carb fruits. So not so high sugar fruits. And then, so those should be the foundation of the diet, and then play around with the other things like whole grains, fats, and those things, and kind of sprinkle those in and see how they affect your heck. Next thing is to incorporate as much stress-lowering activity as possible. Those leisure walks, yoga, quick naps, maybe 1-minute meditations throughout the day. What can you do to help bring your stress down? Because you're going to probably find as you move forward, your heck is going to be much better check if you can lower your stress. And then, so that's important. If your weight loss is a goal and just healthy, I would say everyone, is increase your movement as much as possible. Move in the sense of like taking the steps, getting up from your desk and just walking to go talk to a coworker, or doing those 1-minute bursts, going in doing loo lunges like Bex. I love that. Those things, like just whatever movement, playing with your kids, walking from your car to the store, like parking farther away, all of those are super important to just add more movement in. And there's tons of research to show how much that is important for our overall health, and I would say important for lowering our stress and getting us to that point where we're going to keep our heck in check and be able to get that caloric deficit in a way that doesn't mess up our hormones and just makes it hard to sustain. Get as much sleep as you can, because sleep is huge. If you don't get enough sleep, it releases a hormone called ghrelin, and that's like a hunger hormone, and it makes you just super hungry. I think a lot of us can attest to that, like after a sleepless night with the infant, or maybe back in college when we did all-nighters, those kind of things, you feel really, really hungry the next day. And then the last action step, again, I just want to highlight how important it is to just have patience with the process and just keep bringing your attention back to what works for you and staying engaged with the process. So just being patient. It takes time, and it takes just keep coming back, and knowing that you got it. You're going to figure it out, but that it's a process and not just an end point where you're going to be like, bam, I'm going to eat this exact way for the rest of my life. Because yeah, you might eat sort of that way for the rest of your life, but you're going to change. You're going to have different hormones as we age. You know, I'm going to go through menopause eventually. It's crazy. Or you're going to have a baby, and those are going to affect your hormones for sure. If you're pregnant, or if you're nursing, that's going to have a huge impact on your hormones. So we have to be flexible, and we have to keep coming back to just investigating and staying engaged with the process. So stay patient and engaged. And again, I apologize for all the tech issues, and this is like the third of the videos, so super longer than I expected, but hopefully you guys were able to gain something out of this. And just a little bit more of my thoughts on why I don't think calorie counting is necessarily the best way to go. It can be a tool. And what are some other things that we can do to really get results and really feel comfortable and like satisfied in the way that we're eating, and be able to sustain that in varied forms. Like I said, it's going to be kind of evolving as we go, for the rest of our lives, instead of just being on one plan after another and not really getting anywhere. All right, have a wonderful Wednesday. Talk to you soon.